So the combination of loving what I did, the effort made, but complemented by people that actually took an interest. And I thought that was the coolest part about the restaurant industry. And in New York City at the time, we were a melting pot in that restaurant. Every walk of life. It didn't matter what culture you were, what gender you were, sexual orientation, whatever. It was truly my first experience of being in such a diverse environment. And it just every day in the industry got me excited about just celebrating people. I know it sounds corny, but real, because you get to enjoy other walks of life, learn about other people in kind of cool, fun environment. It really is.
Yeah,
so
sure.
Sorry, I don't mean to ramble. It's just
this is what you're here to do, man. You're here to inspire. You're here to offer that perspective of what it takes.
This episode is brought to you by Restaurant Systems Pro.
With excitement, allow me to introduce to you today's guest, CEO and President of Condado Tacos, Chris Artinian. My man, Chris, are you feeling unstoppable today?
I am. How could I not be? I'm here with Eric Cacciatore.
Yeah, psyched to have you, man. And I recently, it's so awesome that you guys happened to reach out during this time, because you were referred to me organically like a week before we crossed paths online. I don't know if you knew that, but I was talking to Adriel Lubarsky, who is behind Green Places. I don't know if you know Green Places?
Yeah.
And we had him on the show to talk about what can we do in our restaurant to be more green, and how there's this trend moving in the direction of green, and
nice,
almost where it's going to be to the point where it's mandatory. So get ahead of the curve now,
sure.
Right? So you guys are a very progressive organization. How's it been with Green Places? I'm curious.
It's been great. It's always a big commitment, but anything worth doing is.
Yeah.
And at Condado, we're very much a place where you can be an individual and come as you are. And along with that comes with all this sort of how do we do right by each other?
Right.
And I think it's just part of the evolution of where we are, of how do we continue to be mindful of packaging clean food, clean flavors. So it's been a great relationship from there.
I love that. And I will say a little plug here. I am an official affiliate of Green Places. So if you're restaurant, you're thinking about taking your green efforts to the next level, and you're looking for some help, I've heard some amazing things about Green Places. They're doing awesome work, and it's a lot to tackle by yourself to become a zero carbon.
Yes.
So don't try to do it all alone.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thanks so much.
No, of course. Slight little plug. Let's get that motivational, inspirational ball rolling with a success quote or mantra. What do you got for us?
It's early on in my career, I was shared a quote by Winston Churchill that said, "You make a living by what you get, but you make a life by what you give." And I think it just fits hospitality.
Yes.
And because hospitality is one of those great places or industries where you can change someone's day. People come for an escape, and I'm sure many hospitality folks that you spoke to say the same thing. But I'm a purist at this, is that I love being able, I don't care if you're running an ice cream truck, a taco joint, a steakhouse, doesn't matter. But restaurants are a venue where you can change the course of someone's day, their attitude. And I just love that piece of it. The other thing, this industry takes a lot of stick-to-itiveness. And I love the fact that you're just met with new obstacles every day. So another piece of sort of beyond just a quote, the mantra is that staying nimble and staying open to learning new things as things evolve is a big thing for me.
This industry is evolving so fast.
Oh my God.
Right now. It's like your head spinning.
Crazy.
It's crazy. Yeah.
Crazy.
And I love that. Our first core value is we are students. Actually, it's we have integrity. And then it's we are students.
Amen.
And then it's we teach, because you got to pay it forward.
It's so true.
Yeah. And I love how you started this off by saying we got to give. And I think as a self-proclaimed human evolution, human biological evolution, evolutionary psychology, I think that the secrets in business are in understanding where we came from and how we evolved, and trying to recreate that in business. And I think it's a human, it's human basic survival to be able to be of value and to give. I think it's in our nature to want to give, because if we're not adding value to the tribe, if we're not carrying our weight, guess what? They're going to shed us. It's
so true, though. It's so true. And I think this industry really exemplifies that. I think it's so underscored these days. But it's you really have that opportunity. People come into a restaurant, to have a good time. enjoy great food, but really enjoy the atmosphere, enjoy the company.
Yeah.
And you could be having a bad day or something happens. Maybe it's tragic, maybe it's not. Maybe it's good times, but we're here to celebrate life and you and enjoying each other, and I love being a facilitator of that. It's a lot of fun.
Great way to get this thing started, man. So where does it make sense to start sharing your story? Take us to the beginning.
Okay, well, listen, I've been doing this 30 plus years, so I'll take back to the very beginning. Food was a big part of my life. I'm half Italian, half Armenian. Artinian's an Armenian name, as we were kind of sharing a little bit earlier before we got on the mic here. So grew up very much around food and strong food cultures, mothers and grandmas and et cetera. Candidly, never thought of the restaurant business as a career, but I've been around it. As much as we love to cook at home and love all the flavors, we also enjoyed going out. And as a teenager, I bus tables and park cars and started to do catering and things like that, all as a means to just make a quick buck. And it's always been a great way to make some money. I actually went to school for business and finance, and came out of school, went to work for Northwestern Mutual Life, believe it or not, selling life insurance and investments. And just wasn't fulfilled. Did it for a couple of years. Was even, rookie of the year in my agency one year, and really exciting. But pounding the phone away at 500 dials a day just didn't appeal to me. And I always did restaurants on the side. And, long story short, after some trial and error, I made the commitment. I was married. We had our first child, and I came home one day and said, "This isn't for me. I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna make some money in the restaurants, figure this out." And just evolved, and I came across Morton Steakhouse, and read something about Morton's, and I'm like, I'm going to apply there. I'm going to see. I wrote a letter, believe it or not, to the CEO, Alan Bernstein, at the time, who I'd met like 10 years ago. I was like 15 years old at some event. Yeah, it was crazy, because talk about a guy that remembers people. I met him over a burger at some like family event. And, met him through a relationship. I just remembered his name, read about him being involved with Morton Steakhouse. And I'm like, I'm going to write him a letter. I had lunch with him.
The art of the letter. It's such a lost art, and it has so much weight.
And I wrote it, and I'm like, what's going to happen? Do I wait for the call or whatever? So, that's a crazy story in of itself, but I'll brief it up for you. He ended up calling me like 6 weeks after I wrote him the letter. He's like, "Chris, I remember you." This is a restaurant guy. Think about this. "I remember you. We sat at a picnic bench. You had a cheeseburger. I had a blah, blah, blah." And I'm like, I was just totally blown away that he remembered. I was like 15 years old at the time.
Jealous minds like that, man.
It was amazing. But you know what it spoke to? Like his passion for people. And it was just really interesting. Here's this guy, super successful. I'm 15 years old. At the time I was like 23 years old. I met him when I was 15. I don't know what about me made him remember me or whatever, but nonetheless, he gave me the opportunity. And he goes,
"What was the reason for meeting him when you were 15? Was that just a?"
It was like my dad had like some sort of work function, and he was part of it. So it was like one of those things.
So you remembered him. You wrote him the letter when you're 23 years old.
Yep.
I think this is also just, again, like the power of a letter, and especially today, because it's a lost art. And I think if you're willing to slow down to take the time to write a letter today, it's even more powerful than it was when you were,
well said.
1995.
Yeah.
That's when you started with Martin's.
Yeah, with Morton's. Yep. Yeah.
So you're making me think of Gavin Kaysen, who I recently had on the show, and he went to work for Daniel Boulud. I don't know if you know Gavin Kaysen out of Minneapolis.
Yeah.
Yeah. So again, it all started with a letter, and like he went. I think Gavin might have staged with like Thomas Keller or something like that, but he literally worked at one restaurant and helped Daniel Boulud as a student, and I think maybe eventually I can't remember what his titles were.
Right.
But from that one experience, he went on to go start his own restaurant group, and it all started from a letter. It's like, just take the time. If you admire somebody, take the time to let them know. It can go so far.
It's so true, and it's also complementary to what you're saying. If you don't ask, you don't get. If you don't inquire, if you don't seek, you don't get. And I was at a time in my life, I was trying to figure out what was next. And I saw this. I said, you know what? I had such a cool conversation with him. I wonder if he ever remembered me, and took the shot. All it did was cost me some ink and a page.
Yeah.
And he made the call.
Right. Go ahead.
It's crazy. And so when he did, he was, at the time I was still selling insurance quasi. So I was on my insurance letterhead, and he was like, hey, wasn't sure whether you're like soliciting me for insurance. You're looking for this. Which was hilarious.
I like that. Let's get to the point.
Yeah.
Why are we here?
Like literally. And so I was telling him, I said, listen, I don't have a traditional restaurant resume. Typical teenager, bus tables, blah, blah, blah. I'm looking for a career change. I'm married with a child. And I'm looking for a place that I can grow. And he was just like, okay.
You're like the dream of every manager, like that's what every manager wants to hear. Longevity within my organization. Yeah, let's get to work.
And he got all fired up, and he's like, listen, you don't probably not ready for management or anything like that. He goes, but let me put you in touch with some folks. And true to his word, not 15 minutes later, the president of Morton's at the time calls me, and he kind of called me half-heartedly. He's like, okay, Alan Bernstein said I should call you about some blah, blah, blah. And he was very nice and whatever. He's like, I don't know. And at the time I was living in New York. Morton's was based in Chicago. Morton's had just opened in New York City. And he's just like, I don't know when the next time I'm going to be in New York at. And I literally said to him, I go, where's the closest to New York you're going to be? I will find you. And believe it or not, we met in Georgetown, Washington, D.C., hot as blah blah in July, and I remember being in a suit, nervous as hell, like this guy, I can't believe he's giving me the time. I remember sweating like crazy and being like, oh my god, this interview. Met with him, and he's just like, so let me get this straight. Look at you. You want to come into the restaurant business. You're in a suit. You sell insurance. You have some sort of restaurant background. Like, what are you doing here? And I said, listen, man, straight up, okay? I'm married with a kid. I'm not playing games. I'm looking. I don't care where I start, but I'm looking to build a career here and learn. And I'm young. I'm willing to make the sacrifice. I just want to start, and I just think this business is really cool. I think it really fits me.
Yeah, get it more into that. That was going to be my follow-up question, like why the restaurant industry? Because you said you wanted a place to grow, but like why specifically the restaurant industry?
It's a great question, because when I was selling insurance and investments, the kind of the cool part of it that appealed to me was like, I can help people protect their lives, protect their estate, do financial planning, et cetera, et cetera. But it turned out to be all about just the sale. It turned out to be, and at least in my experience. And what I loved about the restaurant industry when I was working in it, was fun. And it was always represented a positive, good time, great food, celebrating with family or friends. And I'm like, I love this. I love cooking. I love entertaining. Like, why wouldn't I want to do this full time? So how do I make a career of this? I just didn't know how. So hence the letter. When I saw that, I'm like, I wonder if there's like a management program, because I think I can make a difference in guest experiences, and I really enjoy people. Why it makes perfect sense to me. Right. And that's kind of how it got started.
Where was Morton's in 1995?
So in 1995, Morton's was founded in Chicago. And it had about, I'm going to say, I think it was like 6 or 7 locations at the time, and they just opened New York City on Madison and on 45th Street between Madison and 5th. So I was living in New York at the time. The president and HQ was in Chicago, and they were just in about a handful of cities at the time.
Okay. So, I mean, did you have the foresight to be like with an organization that was, you wouldn't have known that they were about to experience like massive growth, right? Because from the time that you joined, what was it? You said 3, how many?
It's like 6, 5 or 6.
And where were they when you left?
Just under 100.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So talk about like room for growth, and I think this is a lesson. If you're listening to this, go to an organization that is growing, especially opening a lot of locations, and ask to be a part of the opening team too, because I think that's a whole nother set of skills that you learn. So as you can imagine, at 23 years old, I was 23, 24 years old. I was hoping just to get a job and get my foot in the door. And yes, it was a growing company, hence why I read about it. But to your very point, hindsight being 2020, what an opportunity. So I started at Morton's. They thought I was a little crazy, but we came to a deal, literally. And I said, look, I know I don't have the restaurant resume, but here's the thing, okay? Give me 90 days. Okay, I'll sign whatever you want me to sign. I don't care. Give me 90 days, because if it's not working out, I'll be out of here long before 90. But if this is really what I think it is, this is going to be the best hire you've ever made. So how was it when you got there?
So
was it everything you thought it would be?
And more.
Oh, really?
And more. Because So the first job I had there, $4.13 an hour, married with a child. I had to move in with my in-laws, and my first job was in salad pantry, and everyone except for my wife, God bless her, thought I was nuts. Like, what are you doing? Like, how do you support a family? You're moving in with your in-laws. Like, this is not the smart thing. And my wife, trusted my instincts. I was always a worker, so she never worried about that. But day one, I walked in, I was scared because I'm like, all right, I know my way around the kitchen. I've been cooking all my life, just with, but informally with family. Like, oh my God, this is the real deal. Fine dining steak,
right.
$100 a head, da-da-da.
Largest fine dining
to this
franchise,
day,
right?
All company owned. Largest all company owned fine dining steakhouse in the world.
That's what it is. I knew it was something like that.
Yeah.
Wow.
So day one, put on the checkered pants and, put a knife in my hand, started chopping onions. But the whole goal, as you can imagine, married with a kid, was like, how do I keep moving? How do I go from pantry to line cook? How do I go from line cook to the floor to whatever? So I spent about 8 months full time in the kitchen, working various positions, and it was amazing. That first day, never looked back, didn't care about the money. The experience that I was getting was unbelievable. So that first year, spent some time in the kitchen, went and then transferred into the dining room, started working lunches.
How much easier did that make becoming a server and knowing the food that way?
Oh my God, I knew the menu cold.
Right.
And what was great, it's steakhouse. So while it was fine dining, it wasn't kind of white glove, so you could have a little bit of fun. So when you start getting people fired up about the food and the steaks and the different cuts and the sides and the appetizer, and you can actually take them through an experience.
Right.
Oh my God,
yeah.
It's like a layup. And
yeah.
And I'm just doing what I love, talking about food, serving food, making people happy.
Yeah. So I'm thinking about like Thomas Keller right now, what he does in his restaurants, French Laundry. No matter who you are, what your background is, you could have came from a 3-star Michelin star restaurant and gone into his kitchen, and you start at the same place everybody starts. And it's because the power of going through all the positions and knowing the big picture and knowing what the culture is and being a fly on the wall. And I think by doing that, you probably gave yourself such. I mean, I don't even know if you were probably aware of how fortunate you were to be able to get that big picture approach. Yeah,
definitely not at the time. Yeah. You look back on it and you just know. And as I progressed in my career, but the value of that also is only complemented by great people. I have this business has been fantastic to me, and at an early stage at Morton's, there was just an amazing culture of people paying it forward. People that were passionate about the industry, but were also passionate about getting other people to grow.
Yes.
So when I got excited about, when I came in there in the pantry chopping onions, they knew I needed to make a little more money whenever I could by, how do I get to line cook? How do I get to the next step in the kitchen? And they looked out for me. And they said, if that's your goal, this is what you need to do. And this is what we'll make sure we'll give you the support to do, and delivered on it every step of the way. And so the combination of loving what I did, the effort made, but complemented by people that actually took an interest. And I thought that was the coolest part about the restaurant industry. And in New York City at the time, we were a melting pot in that restaurant. Every walk of life. It didn't matter what culture you were, what gender you were, sexual orientation, whatever. It was truly my first experience of being in such a diverse environment, and it just every day in the industry got me excited about just celebrating people. I know it sounds corny, but real, because you get to enjoy other walks of life, learn about other people in kind of cool, fun environment. It really is.
Yeah,
so
sure.
Sorry, I don't mean to ramble. It's just
this is what you're here to do, man. You're here to inspire. You're here to offer that perspective of what it takes. And I think the big thing I want to bring back to the surface is the power of providing opportunity to other people. And
absolutely.
When I first started this podcast, I was very against corporations and franchises, and I was kind of like trying to be the voice for the independent and to empower the independent. The more I started to dive in, the more I started to realize that, like, if you really want to serve people, you have to grow, because there's different forms of growth, right? But if you want to offer security to people and give them like career growth and opportunity, as soon as you fill all those positions, and if you're not growing, then you're limiting the opportunity for growth for other people, right?
Sure.
And that's one of the things, like, if we're going to grow, if we're really going to provide opportunity to people, we have to grow. And I think there is a sweet spot to be found.
Well said.
But
there's definitely a nuance to it, because I think biggest fear of growth is do you lose the culture? Do you dilute the culture?
Right.
Do people know sort of the DNA?
Right.
Which I think is really important in concepts.
Which we can talk about because I think you guys are slated to open 100 restaurants by 2026.
That's the goal.
So I would love to talk about how you're going to scale culture, but let's I'm sure we'll get there. So looking at my notes, you were with Morton's. You started in '95. By 2004, you were the director of operations.
Yeah.
Okay, so and then you kind of gave us the path. You started at back of house, you climbed the ranks in back of house, transitioned to front of house, climbed the ranks in front of house. Is there like anything that we should talk about before we talk about that transition from frontline employee to director of operations?
I think the only thing that I like to accentuate during that time is there's people that talk about paying it forward. And then there's people that actually do pay it forward. And my experience in a young career is truly was being the benefactor of having people that looked out for other people's careers, and it really spoke to me. I didn't go from pantry cook to even director of ops at that time without people looking out and saying, let me spend some time with you. Let me teach you a little bit more about wine. Let me teach you a little bit more about food. Let me teach you about the finer points of hospitality. Let me teach you about what the proper setup is to get your dining room ready. What it means to be accountable. What it means to be accountable without being a jerk. To hold people to a high standard, but continue to maintain their trust. And keep fueling the desire to grow and learn in a very organic way by holding a level of a standard of accountability, but also creating an excitement that says, I want to learn more. I want to be accountable. I want to be the best at this. And I was surrounded by folks that helped me continue to learn and keep that fire fueled.
I think we got to pull some layers back on that one because you can't just drop some gold on me like what it means to be accountable without being a jerk. I feel like that's very transferable knowledge. So like pay it forward, man. Like to the people listening.
Yeah.
How do you do
Listen,
that?
I think we still struggle with this today in our industry. I think some of the toughest things that restaurant managers or restaurant leaders have is trying to develop a great relationship, but also having the hard conversation that gives them true feedback. I look at our industry; it's a profession. We're the second largest employer next to the government. I mean,
and the healthcare too, right?
And the healthcare, exactly, which is crazy.
So I think it's government, then healthcare,
then restaurant. I think you're right.
Yeah.
But either way, it's in the top three somewhere in terms of. I mean, just just think food and beverage from convenience store to restaurants. How many millions of people are employed by this industry, but it's a true profession.
Oh, for sure.
And done right, it can open up so many doors. And I think the lost art, or the art that we need to continue to refine, is I don't care if you're running an ice cream truck or a fine dining steakhouse. Doesn't matter. You have a standard of sanitation. You have a standard of cleanliness. You have a standard of food quality. You have a standard of how you want to treat your people, guests and internally. Candidly, I think you need to worry about how you treat your people inside first before you can translate it to the guest. So to do that, you have to hold a standard, which means if someone's doing something wrong, you have to have the ability to politely pull someone aside, not crush their ego, not make them feel less than, but be able to have an honest conversation saying, hey, what went well tonight? What didn't? Well, let me show you a few things. Here's how we need to get better. Here's how I want to see you get better. Here's how I can support you to get better. Here's some tools to get better. And by the way, let's set a reasonable timeline to make those improvements so we can get better together. Yeah. And then also be able to assess and move on,
right,
which is usually the exception and not the rule. In my experience, if you can have those honest conversations, you're going to build loyalty. You're going to build trust. You're gonna build someone that's thirsting for knowledge because you're actually going to give them some nuggets that's not only going to be applied for the restaurant, but it's going to apply to life skills.
Yes.
And I can only say this because I am a product of people that figured that out and taught it to me. And I take great pride in that when I'm talking with my folks that are on my team, if I have the ability to give honest feedback, and by the way, I have to accept honest feedback too, because I am far from perfect. And despite doing this 34 years, the day I stop learning is the day I should get out of this business. And I learn as much from the younger generation today as I do anybody else. So I'm still trying to keep my ears open, keep my mind open, and learn from others. It never stops. Yeah. And at the same time, I want to continue to pass along those nuggets from my experience, the stumbles and falls that I've made. But it comes with being candid. It comes with being transparent. It comes with taking approach with an open heart that is looking to better someone, not tear someone down. And when you can find that right mix, it can be very exciting, and you can build some loyalty.
And I think that's the big takeaway too. Is it's starting with the end in mind. Like, I'm telling you this because I see your potential. I know where you can go, and I want to help you get there. And it's just, I'm being candid with you because I respect you. You know, like, I'm telling you this because I want to see the most out of you. And I think when they understand that you have their best intention in mind, and you're not coming down on them like you suck at your job, but I want to empower you. And like in here, like, a lot of people aren't self-aware. They need to be told what's happening to understand where they are. You know?
Without question, and it also affects the team.
Yeah.
And I'll give you an example. One of the things I take great pride in was when I was a general manager at Morton's. I won the turnover award, as in least turnover, 3 years in a row.
Wow.
People would always ask me, what's the secret sauce? Because, I was kind of a, born and raised New Yorker. I had a little bit of edge to me and what have you. They're like, how do you do it? So we all play by the same rules. We all expect it. I will not have someone disrespect the group by showing up late. I will not have someone disrespect the group by leaving without doing their side work. I will not have someone disrespect the group by not running food. If you're not going to pull your weight, you can't be here. And what it does, if I do that right, or the manager does that right, or the team does that right, what it does is create a confidence that I'm going to work. We're all playing by the same rules. Allow me to be myself. I used to tell folks all the time. I said, if you just follow like the 10% of your time of just following the rules, the rest of the 90% is just sell, make a great experience, and we're here for each other. It's all a team. We're all going to make money. And it doesn't get any better.
Yeah.
And I'm just telling you, I didn't have turnover. And let me tell you something. I wrote you up. If you were late, if you didn't do your job, I wrote you up. But I didn't write you up to admonish. I didn't write you up to scold. I wrote you up because it's my obligation to you and to the team to keep the standard.
Right. And let's be honest, following the rules is hard at first until it becomes ritual, until it becomes routine.
Well said.
And I think that there's so much resistance. More human studies, right? We are chaotic people. Like, humans are chaotic.
Yeah.
We grew up in hunter-gatherer bands. Like, we weren't meant to exist in order and structure. Like, life was chaos.
Right.
But the only way we can coexist in groups beyond 150 is through order, because we all need to be aligned.
Yep.
Like, we need rules to coexist.
Right.
And it's unnatural. But the mind is incredibly malleable. It literally changes daily.
It's so true.
And once you know how the mind works, and you just resist like the urge to not do the thing, but once you just do the thing over and over and over again, it becomes culture, it becomes routine, it becomes ritual, and that's culture. And like, that's awesome. Just do it.
Yeah, you're so right.
Yeah,
that's exactly how I feel about it, and that's exactly what I've learned. And again, I didn't wake up with this. This was taught to me. I was disciplined. I had to, believe it or not, I made mistakes. I needed development, and when I was allowed to do so in the right form, boy, did I flourish. So everything that you're saying is just spot on.
I love it.
And I've lived it, and I've been a great benefactor at it through great mentors.
So I did want to spend a lot of time at Morton's because it was such a big part of your career. 1995 to 2012. Again, director of operations, from there VP of operations, from there president and CEO of Morton's by 2010, and you were there for 2 more years before leaving. Is there anything else that we need to know as far as like challenges or like real true like career tipping points for you?
Well, so when I was a vice president for seven or 8 years, can't remember anymore, but before I got appointed as CEO, I had a unique rise to CEO because I went from vice president of operations to CEO of Morton's Restaurant Group. So I went to vice president of operations of Morton Steakhouse to CEO of Morton's Restaurant Group, public company of the holding company that owns Morton Steakhouse and another concept called Bertolini's at the time.
What was that like?
I'll never forget it. So I'll just take 30 seconds here or a minute, because the reason why I like to tell that transition, okay, truth be told, I didn't graduate college. I attended Villanova University.
I'm surprised I did.
But I attended Villanova University, but did not finish. So I didn't have the traditional education of most CEOs and that are on Wall Street, right? So here we were, New York Stock Exchange company. I get a call, and that's even a longer story, but I get a call from the board and whatever, and they appoint me to CEO. And how I found out about it is kind of a funny story, and there's a lot of details to this. But so when it was going down and the transition was about to happen, I didn't officially know. I knew I was getting promoted, but I didn't know to exactly what. There was some change going on in the company, and I'm sitting down with our general counsel, who's going through some talking points for me and a quote that they're going to send out in a press release because we got to send it out a press release because we're a public company. And I'm reading it, and I'm saying, well, the only thing is that the quote says I'm the president and CEO. He's like, yeah, they didn't tell you? I'm like, well, they said I was getting promoted into leadership. I had no idea I was president and CEO until this very moment. That was going to be my title. True story. Believe it or not.
Was that intentional?
True story.
Was there an oversight?
I think it was just everything was happening so fast, and who knows, maybe I didn't even hear it because I was just so like, what is going on? And then that night, I remember going, oh my God, press release is going to go out in the morning. I'm going to start getting analyst calls, of which I've never spoken to an analyst. What's it like to be a public company CEO? I have no idea. I was a VP of Ops like 6 minutes ago. And you know what? I remember sitting down with my CFO because we had an investor conference coming up, and I've never really been to an investor conference, and we were co-presenting. And very fortunately, CFO presents most of the core financials. I'm presenting strategy, which no one knew it better than me at Morton's, being homegrown there and starting from where I started. So I got a little more comfortable with the content and things like that. As decks that I've presented before, I just never did it to analysts or in the public environment. The moral of this story is that everyone puts their pants on the same way, okay? You can get intimidated by titles. You get intimidated by Wall Street. You get intimidated by, oh, my God, I can't believe you're running a public company. I can't believe it. Well, I can't believe it either. But the fact of the matter is, at the end of the day, you got to get up. You got to have integrity. You got to put your best foot forward. You got to speak the truth. You got to, do what you're passionate about. You got to lead people. Well, in one place or another, whether it be learning how to be an assistant manager, learning how to be a general manager, learning how to be a regional manager, learning how to be a director, this is just another stage of that. And what it taught me, after the first couple of weeks and the sting of the fear and the intimidation started to really settle, was, you know what? If you're true to yourself and you're true to who you are, and you can honestly say, I don't know, when you truly don't know, and you seek to understand, you seek to learn, you could figure it out. Yeah. Anybody can figure it out. Yeah. And so that transition, as scary as it was, I think that the night before, I don't think I slept a wink.
So fear is an emotion.
Oh, yeah.
How do you overcome that emotion? What is the inner dialogue you have to overcome this emotion, to get out of your comfort zone, to tackle the thing you haven't done?
I think some of it's situational. If I can speak, for myself personally, a lot of times there's fear and then there's need. For me, I had this burning desire to make sure I was always going to be financially secure. And no matter what position I've been, I always have this kind of weird sort of fear that it's never enough. And it's not greed. It's just like I have 5 kids. I just want to make sure I never could not provide for them.
It's human nature. Maslow's hierarchy of needs, physiological security. Boom.
Well,
right there.
Great point.
Yeah.
And so out of that, so as scared as I was, there was this opportunity that I said, okay. I remember because the inner dialogue was terrifying because it's like, all right, what if I didn't know this? What if I don't know that? What if they ask me a question? What if I don't know? What if? I'm freaking out. And I go, wait a minute. What has gotten you to the dance this far? What got you to the dance from the first time I sat with Alan Bernstein, who gave me the opportunity originally to put a knife in my hand to chop onions at Morton's, was being myself. Don't pretend that I know when I don't know, and just take it one step at a time. Break it down to simple bites and take it one step at a time. And I know it sounds so sophomoric, but I will tell you, I was up all night, literally could not sleep. And then at like 5 a.m, I finally had this calm and said, you know what? What do you have to lose? What got you here is integrity, hard work. just being who you are, take it one step at a time. And you know what? If you stumble, laugh it off, learn, move on to the next. And as intimidating it was, I just stuck to that mantra. And you know what? I made a couple stumbles. My first analyst meeting, that very first meeting, 3 days into it, I tried to crack a joke on stage because I'm a restaurant guy, I'm a hospitality guy. Well, I'm sitting in a room full of analysts who literally, when I said the little one-liner, nobody got it in the room, and they kind of looked up like, wait a minute, that wasn't in the data we have here. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm not in Kansas anymore. But I just kind of rolled with it, and it went great.
Different set of minds.
Just totally different set of minds, but it was a really learning experience for me. You know, read the audience, understand where you're at, and what have you. Not everyone speaks the language of restaurants, right? But anyway, I share that story really more to accentuate that, you know what, we all start somewhere.
Yeah.
And the coolest thing about the restaurant business that it really, really accentuates, it doesn't matter where you come from. It doesn't matter what education you are. It doesn't matter. If you have desire and you love this business, you can make it all that you want. Because I can guarantee you, when I started in the pantry at Morton's, there was no way. I'm like, oh, I'm going to be CEO here one day. No shot. But you know what? Pantry cook became, all right, how do I become a line cook? Line cook became, how do I get to the front of the house? Lunch server became, how do I get to a dinner server? Dinner server became, how do we come to a captain? Blah, 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 blah. All the way up the line was just next step of where the opportunity was.
Hey, man, in our mission statement, the first thing we're saying we do is inspire. And I think that you definitely just inspired us. If that's not inspiring,
that's awesome. Thanks, man.
I don't know what is.
We have to interrupt today's video to let you know that right now, Restaurant Systems Pro is offering a no strings attached 60-day trial that will help you improve your systems, increase your profit, and find better work-life balance. All you have to do is click the link below.
We're back, and after Morton, so you were CEO and president for 2 years. In 2000, what? Sorry, was
12.
12, right?
Yep.
You leave and you start with Smokey Bones.
Yeah.
Real quick, what was the reason for leaving Morton's?
Yeah, I wish it was my choice. You know, oftentimes when there's a transaction, which is what happened, Morton's is a public company, and the majority holders were private equity, and the board had decided that they were going to sell the company, and a private company bought it, Landry's. Landry's had their own hierarchy, executive team, so none of the executives at Morton's were retained. And so for the first time in my life, or first time in my adult life anyway, I was looking for a job.
How did that feel? Your whole career, your whole professional restaurant career.
Weird, because I was like, okay, you know, I was in some ways I felt a little secure because I made a few bucks. And
so there was, you weren't just cut loose, like there was a.
Oh yeah. No, great question. So I was, you know, very blessed. Not only, you know, did I make, you know, a decent income as the CEO, but also the board was very good to me. I had a contract that also allowed me some time of transition for some time after the sale, and I had stock in the company. So made a few bucks, and the nice part about that at that point in my career, and believe it or not, so 17 years there, you know, now I've got 5 kids. My wife and I have never taken a vacation, including our honeymoon, because I've always working in the restaurant industry, going, you know, kind of, you know, 100% at it. And then the kids were getting involved in sports and blah, blah, blah. And we were always chasing the kids in the field.
What was your wife saying when you, at the end of that journey, after leaving your secure, cush job with kids?
You know, on one hand, you know, and I say this with great gratitude. We had a few bucks in the bank for the first time probably ever, and I didn't have to rush to the next job. Very, very fortunately, but it was scary because for me personally, my identity was there, and as I said, to this day, I'm always worried about where the next buck. I don't care how much is in the bank; doesn't matter to me. Where is the next buck? I don't ever have to worry about that. And it's just, I don't know if that's that poor man's attitude, just because I came from Zip. So I'm like, okay, I haven't looked for a job. I loved Morton's. They loved me. I don't know if someone else is going to love me as much as Morton's. And the board was very good to me. I knew them for years and years. Got all this exposure, and my even at the time and again, longer surfing of the day, my mentor Alan Bernstein. he had since passed. So I'm like, oh my God, what am I going to do next? Well, I will tell you, very, very fortunate. I don't think 24 hours went by where other private equity firms started to call me.
Yeah.
Because I think we sold Morton's in February of 12. I think I was working at Smokey Bones by May of 2012, which was less than a 3 months gap. And took some time. We took our first vacation. We literally call it our honeymoon, 20 years in, and enjoyed a little bit of time off. But I had this unique experience because I had this amazing education at Morton's over 17 years of learning the restaurant operational business. But because of my mentor and mentors and the board that I was with, because Castle Harlan, who was the private equity firm that owned Morton's at that time, private and public twice each, were the main private equity firm at Morton's almost the entire time. I started attending board meetings and got all this exposure. So I started to learn the business of restaurants. What I didn't know until after we sold Morton's, that I was a unique commodity in some ways, that I understood how to be an operator, also understood the world of private equity.
Like the most base level through every position. So not only do you know, but you can also empathize with, I think you garner a certain level of respect when you've been in all those roles.
On both sides, right? Yeah. Not only as a leader, most importantly internally from the folks that you're leading, but on the business side of it with the financial partners. The one thing that private equity or traditional investors bring, they bring a ton of knowledge, ton of experience, a ton of experience and education on how to manipulate data. They're amazing what they do. And then they hire, sort of experts like myself to kind of marry the business expertise with their data knowledge and how to make great decisions. Well, I had this sort of marriage of this, through the 17 years with Morton's and learning both sides of this and how to kind of nuance both sides. Because a lot of folks, especially at that time, because private equity in restaurants was still relatively young, a lot of folks were very intimidated by private equity. They're going to change the business. They're ruthless. They're this, they're that, and all private equity firms are not created equal. But it was where the restaurant industry was going in terms of ownership, and especially in terms of chain growth and access to capital, et cetera. So I had this unique experience where I had the operational chops along with the understanding of how that worked.
I would love to talk to you about the world of private equity versus, say, going public or something like that. Because I think that, there's different options on how to get the money, right? And like you said, not all private equity firms are equal. And I think as I evolve as the host of Restaurant Unstoppable, I used to, like I mentioned earlier, I used to focus only on the independents. I want to know what the most successful independents were doing, because independents meaning 1 to 5 small unit operators.
Sure.
But now that I learn, I think that the future is somewhere in the middle. I think what I would like the future to be is more, 20 to 100 regional operations, but not tens of thousands of units, because I feel like that's just too much market share. That's kind of that's just my personal opinion. So I want to teach people how to make the market more competitive, so we can get more 20 unit operators out there that are doing some kind of equity share or something like that. I don't know, but I would love to tap your mind on that. So so you end up with Smokey Bones Bar and Fire Grill, 2012 to 2015. 2016 you join 2J's Deli, and you're there for a year until 2017. 2017, you are with the Beekman Group, which is
private equity firm in New
York. And you were, while there, I think that they ended up working with Condado. I'm always saying the name of this restaurant. I'm so sorry.
Condado.
Condado. Thank you very much. It hasn't reached the Northeast yet.
It's all good.
So I guess in that stretch, what was your personal evolution? I want to make sure we talk a lot about what's going on with Condado, but
sure.
Is there anything that we really need to because really it's about you and your journey. So what were your personal struggles between this gap from, where we left off to starting with Condado?
Yeah. So, I think I can summarize it pretty quickly. So, as I was starting to say before, is that I had this unique experience. So I stayed around private equity owned restaurants, and because I had this unique, it was what I knew, and there was actually a market whether it be from a consulting perspective, whether it be from a interim CEO perspective, where private equity was either just acquiring a new concept and they're looking for an operator with my type of experience to evaluate the viability of a deal, to validate processes in a deal from an operator's perspective. So it was very natural to me to understand who an investment banker was. I worked with all the sort of the large banks, and we're familiar just from investor conferences and being public and all that stuff. So I stayed around it. So Smokey Bones, I got a call from a recruiter through Sun Capital. They had just bought the brand from Darden. It was Turnaround. And my mentor at the time, said to me, he goes, "Hey, great opportunity. You got a few bucks in the bank." He goes, "I don't know what the true opportunity is with Smokey Bones at the time." He goes, "But the opportunity to do turnaround, rebuild a culture."
What is turnaround? For people who might not be familiar.
No, it's a great question, and I'm sorry, I should have clarified. Turnaround.
This is what I'm here for. I'm the dummy in the room to dumb things down.
No, I love it. Turnaround, meaning that Smokey Bones was basically in Chapter 11.
Got it.
And it was my job to help Sun Capital kind of put the pieces together and get Smokey Bones back to cash flow positive.
Got it.
So, as you can imagine, during that time, everything was broken, except
this is the good stuff.
The core food. Core food was great. There were processes that were in there that I thought that they had changed that in my view, were just, you're taking fresh product and somehow not making it fresh anymore. But where was the culture? So what was really cool about Smokey Bones that, even though it was sold, there was still like this core group of people that loved Smokey Bones. I mean, they were like huge fans of it. So I got inspired by that because I started to tap into even like the general managers and the folks that had been there about like what made this place great. And it was about fresh barbecue and et cetera. So I started traveling the restaurants and really learning about how to get into the DNA of this and start the turnaround. In the 3 years there, we step by step, sort of put the culture back together. We started getting more credit for quality. We started to get cash flow positive, started to invest in some minor remodels and starting to build some momentum. At the time, Sun Capital didn't want to, grow any further than we were, and some things had changed, and, I was there for growth and just sort of kind of ran its course and very
like a hired gun at this point. Like you developed a very specific
literally
skill set under a specific type of umbrella, and your skill is turning so you could go in, what the job done right looks like, and you can see what's going wrong almost immediately, and then you flip it.
That's exactly right, and so that's how it would led to 2J. So the private equity guys that owned Morton's had a sister fund that owned 2J's Deli. They gave me a call and said, "Look, we've been through a couple of CEOs. Would you be interested?" And at the time, I wasn't prepared to move to Florida or do, but I said, "I'll tell you what, you have me, at least remotely, and I'd be happy to travel into Florida, blah, blah, blah. And let me assess the situation, work with you, and I'll help you find the next CEO." And they were so good to me with Morton's. There was nothing I wouldn't do for these guys, John Castle and company. And, So
was Beekman Group the private equity firm that acquired Morton's and then sold it?
No, Castle Harlan.
Okay.
Hence John K. Castle,
okay,
who was a relationship I had for 20 years, was the private equity firm that owned Morton's. And then they had a sister fund that owned 2J's, and that's why he reached out to me and said, "Hey, I have this brand that we acquired. Would love for you to take a look and see what you can do to help us out."
Got it.
So I did. I started out as a consultant, and then
here's what's going through my mind. Right
yeah,
now.
Go ahead.
Like in my mind, our job is to build people. Our job in the restaurant industry is to replace ourselves by lifting other people up, so we can remove ourselves to go work on the next thing, and then we grow the next wave of people. And now what I'm just realizing is that there's a whole other layer on top of this, where the guys and gals at the top are pulling people from these private equities, getting their CEOs, like their talent, these people, and it just keeps on going and going and going, man.
Sure.
It's like it's never ending. There's just layers upon layers upon layers, and it sounds like that's what they did for you, is they brought you up to that CEO level, and then now they just they have somebody who how do you go to the next level? By replacing yourself with a level. I always thought like CEO was the top. What's after that?
I think it goes back to the mantra of you're always learning and growing. Yeah. I don't know if there's bigger titles, right, other than owner or what have you, but there's always opportunity to expand. There's always opportunity to grow, and the business is ever changing, and whether it be the restaurant business or anything else. So it's really about what's the opportunity.
Yeah.
And what was relevant with my relationship with the firms that I worked with is that you build up a level of trust.
Right.
And, when you're looking for a leader or you're acquiring, a lot of times when a restaurant company gets acquired or a founder may be at an age where they want to retire and they need a new leader. They need someone else that, to kind of pick up the ball and go. So, if the founder is going, well, your next leader is you want it to be someone that you could trust, someone that you feel like can diagnose the situation, keep the DNA, and sort of roll it forward.
Yeah.
So I humbly say I built a little bit of a reputation of that type of person.
Yeah.
And
no matter what the layer is, I think you need people to build people. So you need to find somebody who can do what you do, which is really, we're in the business of building people, and it never ends.
Never. And listen, I think one of the things that resonates with most is that I think I have a good way with people, and I'm able to activate the best out of people, I think. If I could say that, without sounding arrogant, because
it's weird. I can relate with what you're saying. I feel like I relate with that statement.
It's just people have organically gotten inspired by where I started, so they hear it. They see the story. Started with a knife. Like, how'd you get here? And then they hear all the layers of my story. For me, it just builds a little bit of credibility right out of the gate, and I have been very fortunate that I can get people excited and activate them and build a culture and things like that. And culture is such an overused word today.
Yeah.
You have to live it, breathe it. I honestly believe I learned about culture before I even knew the word culture existed, because it was taught to me through tactics and execution before the word actually presented itself, if that makes sense. Yeah. And so, I think it all starts with that. If you want to move things fast in an organization and you don't have trust in the organization, you're not moving. You're not going to be able to do it. People are not going to believe. They're not going to get aligned as quickly. It just takes longer. If you can have that alignment and trust, you can get into a room and you could, start to really develop aligned goals, shoulder to shoulder, and really build some momentum around excitement around it. You could do anything.
Right. So we got to dive deeper into this. If you're it factor, if you're the thing that makes you unstoppable is your ability to build trust and bring the best and excite people. How do you do that? Is it by aligning? You kind of got into it a little bit. Aligning goals. Like, what else though? Like, what if that's really like your secret sauce? Like, how do you do it? Teach us.
I think it's about clarity. The word that's used a lot today is transparency, right? I think it's overused like culture these days, but at the same time, the benefit of transparency is clarity.
What do you mean clarity? Clarity of what?
What's the goal? What do we want to do? Okay, and what's it going to take?
What's the vision? Is that safe to say?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So here's the end game, right? What is the vision? Where do we want to be? What is the end game? Based on our criteria, based on our DNA, what do we decide? Do we agree that this is our
criteria and DNA? What do you mean?
So DNA. So right now I'm the president and CEO of Condado. Right. Our DNA is come as you are, clean, craveable flavors, core values in a cool environment. Mm-hmm. That starts internally. So how do we play that internally? What's that criteria? Well, we have to have a high level of engagement with our people. And we talk about it. What does that look like, right? Well, that looks like, what is our communication plan? How are we going to communicate? How are we going to develop? What are the standards in which we're going to develop? What does our management training programs look like? What are our hourly training programs look like? Because it all feeds into the ultimate vision. Because if you're not talking about it the same way, you're not setting expectations the same way, you're not setting a criteria the same way to meet those goals, you're not going to see the vision.
So clear, tangible paths for growth within the organization. That's vision. This is how we grow people. This is our training programs, right?
Yep.
This is how we create opportunity for people. You also said, the criteria. There was one other element. There's a lot you're dropping on me right now, and I'm loving every second. Just keep going. Maybe we'll come back to me.
No, so once everyone's aligned on the vision, and and then you're building the criteria, building the standards, but communicating them in a way of what is the expectation. Is like so what does success look like in our eyes, and what are the steps to get there? And you have to get micro about it. And it's not about micromanaging, or I don't mean micro. I mean, you just got to be detailed. Step 1 leads to step 2. Step 2 leads to step 3. And to me, as a leader, you have to activate. You got to build that trust. You got to build the alignment. Then you have to collectively, as a leadership team, but this is going to permeate the organization. Then you got to collectively agree on what those next steps are, and then how are we going to hold them accountable. Right? Because that's what creates the excitement. Because if you're not holding people accountable, people think accountable means fire or hire, blah, blah. Yeah. Accountability has nothing to do with that. Accountability has to do, are we committed to this? And we're going to do it the right way? And we're going to do it consistently.
Yeah.
And if you're not accountable to it, you're not just going to achieve it. So forget about the way they're going to get fired or written up. That's not what accountability is to me. Accountability is, here's what we're committed to doing. Here's how to do it. And if we miss a step, we're going to lose our minds about it. And yes, we should lose our minds about it. Why? Because it's going to prevent us to be accountable to the goal that we set, to maintain our DNA, to maintain our standard, and the commitment we make to our people.
Yeah, man, what's going through my mind, the question I had for you that I couldn't remember was the communication part and the framework for communication, what you talked about. What is that framework for communication? I have this thing in my mind, but I don't want to influence what you're about to say. I don't want to make sure it's
your own thought. Listen, I think communication today is ever evolving. Back in the early days, the email was just starting to become in a company newsletter or whatever. Today, that's so irrelevant. Yes, we do weekly communications where we have what we call the weekly fresh at Condado, and our training department leads it, but every department puts in updates and things like that. So that's one fashion of communication. But today, how do we meet our core team? Is everyone's on mobile, so we're using seven shifts. We're texting all through different platforms so we can communicate. The value of communication. God, there's so much to this. I can't even get. So let me even take a half step back.
Yeah.
The key about communication is, what do you want to communicate? And how do you prioritize communication? Because a lot of times people say communicate, so you create a document or you create a platform, and you're just throwing millions of things out there. And by the way, I'm still guilty of this to this day. We have too many initiatives going on, too many priorities. So how do we prioritize it? So I think companies that communicate great can learn every thing they spend almost monthly on how to evolve communication. How do we reach and permeate? Because our number one challenge is we could sit in our leadership team discussions. Well, how do we just make from where the time we decide what we're going to do, how do we get it to the regionals? How do we get it to the restaurants? How do we get it down to the dishwasher? And everyone understand it. So
how does this communication? How does the message ripple to the very end?
So how we do it today, is that the question?
Well, that's what I'm hearing from you.
Yes,
yes. That's the challenge.
That is the absolute challenge.
If we're talking about this up here at this upper management level, how does this message make it to everybody so
that is it, and
soaked up,
and that is what we, very openly, it is a living and breathing process.
Yes, because
the way people hear, receive. Even the vehicle in which they get information today is in so many different ways. How
so much distraction.
And you have, right now we're kind of working within 3 generations of a workforce within our industry, and all 3 kind of receive information differently. So the challenge for us is what platforms, what is the form, how organized we can be, how do we prioritize information to ensure that it's into digestible pieces. And it permeates down to the dishwasher.
Yeah. So how?
I don't know if I have the answer to that. If I'm being fully transparent.
There's tools out there. Wisetail is a tool that people are using to basically these communication tools.
So popular. Today, in what we do is we have a weekly newsletter. We have a program called 7 Shifts. This is internal. We have a program called 7 Shifts, which is like almost like a chat forum, if you will.
Started off as labor management, but there's so much more now.
So much more to that. You can write notes in there. You can put memos in there, and every employee could have access to it. And
past sponsor of the show. We love 7 Shifts.
There you go. Yeah. So and there's other forms of it, but anything today, the reason why I say I don't know if I had the answer, because I don't know if there's any one real answer today, because I think it's what modes are you identifying within your organization that are working and what is not.
Right.
Today we're about right now we are actually looking at new technology to figure out how do we consolidate our forms of communication and still not lose the way people receive information.
Have you heard of One Huddle?
We have.
Oh, man. I had Sam Caucci on the show, and I think that what I talk about using human evolution and like going with the grain instead of against it and just trying to figure out how does this thing between our ears work.
Yeah.
I think what they're doing is really interesting, and just getting the message across with these gamification of training and games and making it competitive.
You hit it right on the head. I think gamification is a big thing for us, and One Huddle is one of those that has a great reputation of doing it well.
Are you working with them?
We can't really say.
Okay.
They are one of the folks that we're talking to, but you hit it on the head. What they are doing in gamification and that level of engagement, not only for internal communication training, asking questions in the form of sort of trivia, and making learning much more fun, fluid, and easy to access versus like, okay, watch this video on how to chop this. It's like, and then you're falling asleep 5 minutes into it.
Yeah.
This creates a great level of engagement.
Seeing how you stack up.
That's where we're headed.
Making you want to take the test over and over and over again,
Literally.
so you don't look like the schmuck in the group.
Exactly.
Like, I mean, there's like human just things that we can leverage to help use human weaknesses to their advantage. Because it's going to make you better, right? Like, I would say human weakness, ego could be considered a weakness, but we're all proud. We want to be seen. We want to be equal.
That's right. That's
so
right.
Use that to our advantage to gamify it and have people be proud of their scores and what they're doing, not just go through the motions.
And Joe Kahn, the founder of Condados Tacos, it's one of the things that's really near and dear to his heart is like, listen, especially in the hospitality business, everyone learns differently. Everyone comes from a different background and what have you. How do we meet them at their learning? Because I want to change people's lives. It's exactly like his mantra. He says, I'm so fortunate to have the success that I had. I spent years and years and years trial and error as an entrepreneur, and Condado, hit. I want to now change people's lives, help them build careers. And gamification and engagement is just a great way to reach folks. So, and that's why I go back to with communication. It's like today, gamification and those types of platforms. You reference one of the brands like One Huddle. I think that's where communication's going, and we just want to stay on top of it.
Yeah.
And that's how we look at it.
I will reference the episode 966, Sam Caucci. I interviewed Sam. Really impressed with what they're doing over there. And if you it sounds like you haven't made your decision yet, so I'd encourage you to listen to that episode.
Yeah.
Maybe you might learn something about the organization that you like. But I love what they're doing, and what I've been sitting on this whole time, and I gotta say, and I'm trying to be better about echoing the core values of Restaurant Unstoppable, because the whole reason of having core values and a vision and a mission is so you can share them, right?
Yes.
So our core values are: we have integrity, we are students, we are educators, we are collaborators, we are communicators, we show up, and we have fun. So when I interview guests and they support my core values, it makes me be like, I think I might have figured something out after 1,000 interviews. I think I might have something. But communication to me is that, like, so we are students. We like you said, we're constantly learning. It never ends. You mentioned that earlier. We are educators. It's not enough to learn. You have to teach and replace yourself and pull people up around you.
Right.
We are collaborators. You can't do it alone.
Right.
Even if you know how to do everything, you're probably not the best person at doing it. So find somebody who is good at doing it, and then we communicate, because we need to all be going in the same direction. We need to all be pulling, and you need to constantly be communicating. Like, what's happening at the top needs to be communicated and echoed throughout everyone who touches your business, right?
That's right.
So I'm trying to figure out, like, if I'm opening a restaurant tomorrow, so like we're relaunching Restaurant Unstoppable Network. I'm like, I need to like shit or get off the pot. Like, what am I doing if I'm opening a restaurant tomorrow based off all these interviews? And I love EOS for communication, the Entrepreneurial Operating System. Are you familiar with that?
No.
Have you heard of the book Traction?
Yes.
Do you know Wickman?
Yes.
So that's within the book of Traction, EOS is the process that the
Okay.
Entrepreneurial Operating System is what they do. But within that, the way that they communicate is they have, their like 10-year like vision, right? 5-year, and they have an annual meeting that constantly refreshes that. But then within a year, they have their quarterly meetings, their like weekly meetings. But like it's this idea of like creating process, ritual, routine on how to communicate. And like you were saying earlier, you can't just tell people what to do, and like you got to tell them, where you're trying to take them and what the opportunity is for them, and like the potential you see in them, and like what they're doing right, but what they could be doing better. You got to follow up.
Yep.
You can't just talk to them. You got to follow up. And EOS creates a system for you to be able to follow up. Like they call it like your level 10 meetings, like, and they call it rocks is what they do. You have these quarterly rocks. Then you have weekly meetings. Are you getting closer to your rock? So it's baked in. It's baked in for you to be able to constantly be growing, and that's why I love it so much.
Well, that really resonates with me because I think 80% of what we do is repeat ourselves,
right?
And I think it's really important.
You have to
because the nature of what we do, the things that are most important, we should be talking about every day.
Yeah.
And one of the things I try to stay disciplined, and again, it's always a work in progress, is it's not about what the next new thing is. It's about, are we doing what we already know, and know is part of our DNA really, really well. Because, I love the expression evolution versus revolution, because I think that's exactly what great restaurant brands do. It's not about reinventing yourself every 2 years. It's about properly evolving. Not only involving with the guests, but more importantly, involving internally on how we teach, how we attract, and get people excited in our restaurants.
You're never going to get there. It's constant.
No.
And like now you're making me think of, I'm sure you've heard of the book Start With Why. Simon Sinek is a
yes.
name. Yeah. So Simon Sinek, Start With Why. One of his more recent books is The Infinity Game, and that's exactly what you're talking about. Is the infinite game is there's an endpoint, and that's what was wrong. He references Milton Friedman, who was this economist who was popularized in the 1970s around this idea of the sole purpose of an organization is to return profit to the stakeholders.
Gotcha.
And there's another guy that was around the turn of the 18th century named Adams, who said the sole purpose of an organization is to add value to everybody it touches. And for some reason, we got off that track. And in the 1970s, this fucking asshole dude, Milton Friedman, says, no, it's all about profit. And now it's just kind of like we're like starting to realize, no, it's not all about profit, because you can only grow so much before the bottom starts to fall out. And it's not about infinite being the best. It's about the infinite game, the infinity game of like constantly growing, constantly evolving. There is no end. It's generational. You create something that gets passed on.
It's so true. Yeah. Oh my! Wow, I love it. I love the fact that you're like a steel trap with this knowledge.
I drive around the country and listen to audiobooks, man.
Fair enough.
Yeah, but I love it. And, it's like my infinity game is making sure the information that you have is getting out to people, and that we're passing this knowledge on to generations, so we don't fall back into the same trap.
It's funny. 30, 33, 34, 35 years into this, I am still. I'm 54 years old. I feel like I'm 24, honestly, still, because I still have such a thirst to learn. I still feel like a neophyte, believe it or not. Even after doing this all these years, and I'm really inspired.
What's a neophyte?
Like a rookie,
okay.
like a beginner. Yeah. Great question. I after all these years, what I'm most inspired is that this generation of restaurants is so different than it was 30 years ago.
How's it different?
I think 30 years ago there was a lot less choice, so there was probably a little bit more refinement in restaurant concepts in terms of details of service and the teaching of the art of hospitality and things like that. I think it's gotten a little diluted. I'll give you a great example in real estate. Okay, years ago, used to talk to landlords and they go, well, I'm only putting one food and beverage outlet in this center, and then I'm going to have a dry cleaner, and I'm going to have a convenience store, and blah blah blah. And
it was about winning the game, right?
It was, but more the point of what I was trying to make was like, food and beverage was like not an amenity as it is today. So today they'll put 5 restaurants next to each other in the strip center, whereas 30 years ago I'm only doing one, and I have to do retail. Well,
now Amazon helped with that,
without question. And the other thing is, I think this fast casual exploded that because it created like almost specialty groups within restaurants, right? You want a burger, you're going to go to a burger joint. Right. You're not going to go to a place that has burger, salads, pastas, and whatever, because if you're going to go to a burger, you're going to go to a place that just rocks the burger, then may have one or two other things that are veto vote. But
yeah, that's one of the biggest lessons I've learned in the show is do one thing really well that you can scale, because you can't be everything to everybody.
Well, and because of today's environment, because you can go, I want, Mediterranean food, I'm going to go to a place that does Mediterranean. I'm not going to go to a restaurant that has a generic name that happens to have, a gyro on this on the menu. I'm going to go to a place that does it culturally from scratch and rock it. And today, you want a burrito, there's an expert for burrito. You want a taco, there's an expert for taco. You want a burger, there's an expert, place to go for burger. So the power of choice today has never been stronger. I mean, you can literally sit at a light and probably pick off at any major intersection 7 to 10. Do the exercise, 7 to 10 food from convenience store to restaurant places to get food or beverage.
Yeah, and especially a big reason why that's happening is because how people are finding their food is they're not searching by like restaurant name, they're searching by menu item.
Exactly.
So
well said.
Exactly. All of this is being driven by SEO and people trying to find what they're in the mood for right
sure.
now. So like, if you're a restaurant and you're trying to like appeal to everyone's specific desire in this moment, it's too confusing. But if you do one thing really well and you're known for that one thing, you can put all of your marketing efforts towards selling that one thing and being discovered for that one thing and building systems and processes and procedures around that one thing and training around that one thing. You're going to fucking blow that one thing out of the water, man. And you're going to get discovered.
Amen.
And there's a lot of power to
it. Yeah.
This is what,
well said.
Do you know Kathleen Woods? Kathleen Woods. She was with Cane's. Raising Cane's.
Oh, yes. Yeah, know of her. I don't know her personally.
She's now coaching. She talks about the one thing. What's your one thing?
Yes.
I have good friends with Ed Doherty, 1 degree. And now these people are getting really smart about coaching around doing one thing.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's very relevant today, and I don't think it's going away.
Yeah. I think now's a good time to take our next break, and then we'll come back and start talking about where you are today and why you're doing the work you're doing today.
Okay. Sounds great.
We have to interrupt today's video to let you know that right now, Restaurant Systems Pro is offering a no strings attached 60-day trial that will help you improve your systems, increase your profit, and find better work-life balance. All you have to do is click the link below.
So I think now we can kind of transition to how you found yourself as the CEO and president of Condado.
Yeah. So unique story. As you mentioned earlier, I was with the Beekman Group, private equity firm out of New York. So I had a unique opportunity to become a managing director with the Beekman Group, and more to complement the investor professionals being as an operator. So for 3 years, I looked at probably, 150 restaurant deals a year, and sat on a few different restaurant boards along with the group. And, in the process, discovered Joe Kahn and Condado. So about a year before we acquired Condado at Beekman, I met Joe at a conference, Joe Kahn, the founder, and I was like, woo, this is a cool concept. Simple menu, right? Tacos, queso, guacamole, and a ton of margaritas. Yeah. And a very simple menu, clean, no preservatives, clean flavors, and you could build your own taco, build your own bowl. And I'm like, this checks a lot of boxes in terms of clean, relevant, casual, focused menu. And it's in full serve, but
margarita's good volume.
Margarita's great volume.
Too.
We sell, believe it or not, our alc mix in a full service restaurant is 35%. Wow. So, which is high. Next to a bar.
I've actually been to a Condados, and I didn't realize where I was when in that moment. It was like earlier this year. I helped my friend move to Columbus, Ohio, and she lives across the street from a Condados, yeah. And I was like, this place is great. And then within the year, you're being recommended to me. And I didn't realize it until I came back to Columbus. I was
That's
like,
awesome.
I was at one already, and I didn't even like I didn't connect the dots. But yeah, I mean, I love the margaritas are really.
Oh, thanks
I
so
had
much.
At least two.
No, and as you should, and we're really proud of everything that we do is fresh and with clean ingredients, no preservatives, etc. So when I met with Joe Kahn and saw this, I was like, wow, this checks a lot of boxes. A lot of fun. We started learning about the concept.
Can we dial it back a little bit? Like, help us understand, where was Condados before?
So the original started in Columbus, Ohio, right down the block from Ohio State University in the short north of Columbus. And the original concept was about like just being kind of this hipster, cool spot with just in an atmosphere that is come as you are with craveable food.
Okay. And where were they before they landed on your radar? They opened in 2014, correct?
Yes.
And you discovered them in 2000.
I discovered them in 2000. End of 2018, going into 2019.
And were they seeking out? Were they trying to find private equity?
At the time, they were just exploring that opportunity. So they were just starting to attend conferences to see, is this something we would want to do?
So you say 2017?
2019. 2000, end of 2017, 2018 is when I first heard about it, and we probably started getting engaged around 2019.
Okay. So where were they in 2019?
2019 in terms of states. So they were.
How many locations were they at?
Let's see. When we acquired in 2020.
Yeah.
So let me just back that up. When we acquired in 2020, I think there were 11 restaurants with 5 in the pipeline.
Okay.
11 restaurants open with 5 in the pipeline. Give or take one. I may be off one. So when I first met them, I think there were 6 restaurants or 7 that were predominantly in Ohio and Pittsburgh. And at the time, Indy. Indianapolis, and so that was the footprint at the time.
What was the pain they were feeling, where they said we need to go get private equity?
It was, Joe Kahn started another brand and had been through this once before, and what he learned.
He started a restaurant and failed, right?
Well, no. He started a couple of restaurants and failed early on, like many restaurant entrepreneurs. But
the undergraduate.
He exactly well said. His original sort of concept was a very similar concept, not to be named, and he had a kind of a like many times, just a falling out with the partners for one reason or another. Not worth going into.
I mean, that's one of the reasons why I lean so much into the conversation of partnerships. Not your partnerships, so I understand you can't talk about, but I'm constantly asking about partnerships. It gets weird, but at the same time, I feel like we don't talk about it because it's so weird, but we need to talk about it.
It's not an uncommon story. I could say this is that
different vision
it was just different vision of what was wanted, and Joe's a dreamer. Joe Kahn he's a dreamer.
Relate.
What's that?
I said I can relate. I'm trying to change the world, man.
I mean, and Joe is very much that way, and so they kind of parted ways for one reason or another, and Joe sort of recreated the concept at Condado, in Columbus, and the vision that he had, from what he smartly learned from is like, if I really want to scale this thing and make a difference, I got to surround myself with the right people.
Yep.
So he got to.
He
did.
Can't do it alone.
And Johnny Zila, who's our COO today at Condado, was his day one, like almost his first hire. I think if not the first hire, he was actually looking to get away from the restaurant business, and he just wanted a bartender shift just to kind of figure out what he was going to do next. He was getting kind of burned out, and met Joe and then next thing you know, he started bartending, and blink, 6 months later, he's like basically the director of ops, and now he's our chief operating officer. But he and Joe just had this vision of like, we want to do something different, something craveable. And Joe started to surround himself. So when he got to like 3, 4, 5 restaurants, like, if I really want to scale this, I got to surround myself with people that have done this before.
Yeah, what I call this is building the house before you move into it. You can't start to build and you not have people and things in position, the organizational structure in position before you move into it. But the organizational structure comes at multiple 6-figure incomes.
Yeah, sure.
And you need those things. So that's why a lot of people go to get the the investment because they can't come up with the cash flow to support that team they need from day one, and not everybody's willing to do it for sweat equity.
Well, and that's just right, and that's the hurdle. And are you willing to make that commitment? Are you willing to give up that kind of cash? And in Joe's case, he was willing to give up, make his own sacrifices for personal income and things like that to invest in others.
This is why I just
for the bigger
my,
price.
my car, basically, so I can grow a restaurant and stuff. Well, I can totally relate to this.
But how many great entrepreneurs do that and realize that there's a bigger prize if I do this right and I surround myself with the right people. There could be I'm going to get what I want to achieve.
The pie, my slice of the pie might be smaller, but the pie is bigger.
Yes,
and we can go further together. I might be getting a smaller slice, but that is still going to be bigger than a small pie for myself.
That's exactly, and that was Joe's philosophy. So he started, he got an experienced CFO. He got a development guy on the real estate side, and started to build the team. So when we came to Joe, he had just started to formulate this team, and they were starting to mature together. So they were ready to go. And what his goals were at the time, as I learned from meeting him, was like, look, I know what my capabilities are, and we can grow one or two. He goes, but I want to build this. I want to create jobs. I want to make a difference in people, and to be able to do that in this environment, I need a partner who knows how to do it. Yeah. And that's where Beekman came in at the time.
So you started looking at what he had built up to this point, and you were saying to yourself, okay, like, here are the things: simple menu, clean, no preservatives, build your own, margaritas. What were the other things that you were looking at as an investment bank, or as somebody who was a part of a private equity firm, Beekman? What were you looking for? What do you continue to look for? What should we be mindful of if we're maybe thinking maybe I need to go to a private investor, right?
Yeah.
Like, what things should we be thinking about to become appealing to those private investors?
Yeah, I think one is how do you differentiate? Yeah. So it's funny. It's like we did not invent the taco, right? Condado did not invent the taco. We may have perfected it, but we did not invent it. Just like many others didn't invent the burger and pizza and whatever. What makes one special? So what are the things that make Condado different? So when we were looking at Condado, it was like what appealed to me was, okay, clean and craveable was great. So the commitment to clean food, I thought that was very relevant today. And to be able to say it out loud and deliver on it was unique, right? There's a lot of people that say we do this or that, or it's fresh. It's funny. Fresh is such a broad term these days, right? Because fresh, depending on who you ask, it could be fresh out of the box.
It's relative.
Or fresh out of the ground, and it's all relative.
I think the definition of fresh is not frozen.
Yeah. Right? I think that's probably the most prominent definition.
Yeah,
right.
Like if you look at in the world of restaurants,
sure, I think that's fair.
Yeah,
I think that's fair. So that was one piece. Two was that it was in this sort of attractive price point that was not the cheapest, but it was not the most expensive. So it was very affordable. So from a taco, it was very approachable. Our entry level tacos at $4, and our entry level margaritas are on $9.95 today. And so it's not the cheapest, but with clean quality, we're not attracting someone that's going to look for the cheapest taco through a drive-through or what have you. But we're looking for someone that wants a little bit better food, a little bit better experience. And the other caveat here is that 90% of taco was fast casual. So at Condado, we had this unique. Every restaurant has this unique graffiti artwork as you're seeing around you. Every place is different. Local artists. So we had this twist of this come as you are, this cool environment that was a little something for everybody, with clean, craveable, focused menu, and this sort of fun, upbeat environment. And it was something that I just didn't see consistently being done everywhere. Everyone else sort of has rinse and repeat. And none of our tacos are traditional. We're not trying to match up with the Mexican street food or what have you. We just do a really cool version of it. Now, if you want to build a traditional taco, you could build your own all day long.
Infinite creativity with the taco.
Infinite.
It's just a shuttle to put whatever's inside of it into your mouth.
Literally.
I spent some time in Texas, and ever since, I constantly have corn tortillas on hand because it's just so much fun to anything you can just. It's just a way to shove things into your mouth. It's
yes, fun. I mean it literally is. It's like it's like America's Wonder Bread now.
Yeah. I don't think they're supposed to be bite sized, but I managed. But what about EBITDA? What kind of things like that? Like in terms of how to grow our the assets, how to value your business and know what it's worth when you're selling it.
Yeah, so
can you speak to that? Is that your sweet spot?
Yeah, no, I absolutely can. So I mean, it's different for everyone, right? But in the restaurant industry, I think there's some very core KPIs key performance indicators that are really relevant. One, prime costs need to be south of 60, period, 60%. Because I mean, it's just a tried and true formula since the beginning of time.
Yeah.
So and your prime costs, what are they? It's your COGS, cost of goods. Predominantly food, paper, supplies related, and then labor.
Yeah.
So the better you can do of less than 6%, but the better off you're going to be.
Yeah.
And because this is it's a people intensive business, and it's a penny business.
Yeah.
So that's really important.
Yep.
Occupancy costs, meaning rent, utilities, CAM charges, things like that. Anything related to the building, really should be south of 8%.
Okay.
And the lower you go, the better off you are, because at the end of the day, you want to try to drive 20 or 25. 20% restaurant margins considered like a good industry standard, especially in all company owned.
So now we're at 68%.
Yeah.
So we got 32% left.
So
what about profit?
So listen, at the restaurant level, gross EBITDA, can live at 20%, and you're gonna see company EBITDA probably grossing around, call it somewhere between 15 and 18%. Earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. Basically gross profit.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah. So awesome stuff. Thank you for those specifics. And this is the kind of stuff I love. Again, my mission, if the restaurateur's job is to give their team the aiming point of what the job done right looks like and what's capable, my job is to be that for the restaurateur. And those are some key aiming points that you just dropped on us. So thank you very much.
Oh, my pleasure.
Wow, man, what do we talk about? So you said when you came here, before this, your job was to go into organizations and kind of you were hired gun to flip them. But it sounds like that wasn't the case here necessarily. It sounded like things were good at Condado.
It was not a turnaround at all. So how I came to leave the Beekman Group and come to Condado full time. So going back to my 17 years at Morton's, I never thought I'd find a home again, to be honest. And I was there 17 years, mentors, culture. Check the box on everything you could think of when it comes to people in terms of growth, great environment, a lot of fun, and longevity. Well, today, hard to find that in our industry. It can be very transient. So I got very accustomed to the private equity model, hence why I went to go work for private equity full time, which if you would have asked me 20 years ago, I'd be like, no way am I sitting on the other side of the table. I'm very good at what I do, I think, on the operations side. I don't want to be full time on the other side. But the nature of the business was changing so much. I said, you know what? I don't know if I'll ever find a home like that again, a culture like that again. So I took a try at private equity. Well, when I found Condado, Joe Kahn and Johnny and the team, I'm like, oh my God, this is what Morton's was like in its infancy when I started there. This is pretty freaking cool, and I love the culture, I love the people, I love the idea that they wanted to change people's lives, build careers, and it's hard to find these days. A lot of people talk about it, but it's hard to find a really a brand that really lived it.
Yeah.
And
a lot of people talk the talk, but
and listen, one day you'll speak to Johnny Zila, and Johnny is a poster child for this. But how to set goals, how to mentor, how to change people's lives, help them build careers. So I started, as I got to know the players, I'm like, man, this is a really cool brand. We were looking for a CEO to help lead growth and bring some experience. Not that Johnny and Joe didn't have it. They were very open about it and said, listen, we don't have the experience of scaling this side. We want to bring someone in to help us do it. We know how to execute better than anybody. And
humility is a huge part of success. Knowing what you know and what you don't know.
Oh, my God,
and being
you said
willing
it.
to get out of your way to help what's best for everybody.
Without question. And that's what Joe and Johnny had. It's just like, hey, we don't know everything. We just love the brand. And we want to keep the DNA. We want to keep the culture, but we need help in scaling. So we kind of struck out a couple times in finding the right fit, and we got through COVID. I mean, when we did the deal for Condado, we closed February of 20. The world shut down March, like whatever it was, 15th or 17th or whatever it was. We're like, uh-oh. And we navigated through it together. We really built some great relationships and whatever. And after a couple years, we were struggling to find that next leader, and I said, this is a great opportunity for me. This is me Chris Artinian talking to myself, I'm like, this could be a great opportunity for me to get back in and lead a company, great culture and whatever. Boy, I didn't think I was going to find this again. So I went to my partners at Beekman and said, look, I know this is a crazy idea, but you know what? I love the firm and I love what I'm doing here, but I'm a restaurant guy through and through. So,
which brings me to my next question.
Yeah.
You said not all private equity firms are created equal.
Yeah.
And that sounds like this is a really special firm. What, as a restaurateur looking to go to private equity, what should we be trying to identify, and what is a good private equity firm that is right for what how do we know what the good ones are versus the bad ones? What should we be looking for?
I think in my experience, and I'll just speak for myself, is that you wanna have partners that play in the space. Number one, so. There are some firms that are not as disciplined to what the verticals they invest in, and the Beekman Group is they'll come right out.
Not disciplined to the verticals they invest in.
And what I mean by that is that what are they knowledgeable about? Do they invest where they are knowledgeable? I guess is the best way to put it. So Beekman, John Triano, the founder of the Beekman Group, one of his first investments was a Dunkin' Donuts franchisee, and. It was a franchisee that was, So
he invested in a franchisee for more Dunkin' Donuts?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. So what it was, he saw an opportunity. There was a business in somewhat distress, and some of it was just, lack of management and some of the basic and blocking and tackling. John had just started the firm, very successful with another large private equity firm in his history. He's a really sharp guy. And so this is one of the early investments. So much so he actually even went to Dunkin' school. I mean, because at the time Dunkin' was, really resistant to private equity, being franchisee owners in those days. But John made that commitment that, hey, I'll go through the school. I'll do whatever you require. And he really started to get familiar with sort of the metrics of the restaurant business. He'll still not claim himself a restaurant guy. He's a professional investor. But he understands the biz. He understands the key KPIs. He understands, from a high level, what makes it tick. And I think when you're looking for a firm, you want to understand that this is people driven. It's not just a numbers game. And by the way, just to be clear, 80% of our decisions are 90% of our all of our decisions are 80% of them are driven by data.
Right.
But then you marry
80%.
Well, I always say 80%. Some of the investors may say, oh, it's 95%, or maybe it's 100%.
Well, this is a very special number that you just mentioned.
Well,
there. So
I
if
say
80%. What's the other 20?
The other 20% is
what's going on here?
is experience.
Yeah,
because
the human the chaos.
Exactly.
So I think this comes up. This 80-20 rule comes up all over the place, and I'm right there with you. And like. We live in a world, and that's what happened from 1970s when this guy Milton Friedman was like, it's all about the bottom line and numbers and profit, and we got to win, we got to be the best. To what about the human factor? We are chaos. People are chaos. We have to take into account the part of that equation that you can't change is that humans are in this. Right. So I think that 80% is very smart because what about the part that is unpredictable? And if we're here and we just have to have faith that the things that we're doing, when we help other people, karma, right? These things of when you give, you get. The more you help, the more that comes in. You can't measure that. That's the 20%.
That's right.
That makes up 80% of the yield. There's this crazy bounce, and it just keeps coming up over and over.
I think it's that intangible. So the great part about data is going to help you. It's going to help you make great menu decisions. It's going to help you make great real estate decisions. It's going to help you make really great business decisions without question. Yeah. The X factor is the people. Yeah. The X factor is the culture, right? You can measure it. You can do employee surveys and whatever and get a number on that or whatever. But at the end of the day, that's why that 20% is about the human experience in my view, and how consistently are you driving that? How aligned is a group? Because you can have the greatest set of data, but how you execute on that data is going to be driven by that extra 20%.
Yeah. And my listeners are going, God damn it, Eric, you did it again. Your guest was on a tear and you interrupted him with your crazy thoughts. But I did interrupt you. You're on. Can you pick up your train of thought when you're saying you focus on that 80% of the data? What was your train of thought? Did you just finish it?
I just did.
Okay, cool. Just wanted to make sure I didn't pull
No. You're good. You're good.
All right. So really the format of today, my show today, is basically where did you come from, where are you now, and where are you going? I feel like we're at this place of where are you now,
sure.
Right? And I am curious. What is the difference between a CEO and a CIO?
So,
because you're the CEO and president.
Yes. So it's unique. CIO is CEO is Chief Executive Officer, right? CIO is in our concept is Chief Innovation Officer.
I feel like that you're kind of confusing me a little. So like, what is the difference?
The difference is the exact difference between me and our founder, Joe Kahn, who's our COO.
Yeah.
So I'm the Chief Executive Officer, and I like to say, and Joe Kahn, the founder, is the Chief Innovation Officer. So the difference is this: Joe is the dreamer. He's the creator. He can go in and look at tacos. He can go in and look at the restaurant on the artwork and whatever. It's not my DNA. Joe can look at a blank sheet of paper and come up with a concept.
I identify with Joe a lot,
and you would. I totally get that vibe. I am the great replicator of a great idea. That's what I do best. So I am process. I am systems. I am helping build culture. I am sort of the strategist that takes a dreamer, the innovation guy, the one that's going to throw a lot of stuff at the dartboard. Not crazy. Well, sometimes crazy, but takes those wild ideas. And what my job is, if I'm doing my job right, I go, that's completely nuts, but I love it. How do I get this into an executable form?
Okay.
And that's where the yin and the yang is.
Yes.
You need dreamers. You need dreamers that push the edge, to push the crazy idea, to push the one that someone like me is going to go, that's nuts.
Right.
But I've been very fortunate to learn in my career, be like, you know what? Not everything's so crazy. There's a great idea in everything. So how do we make it ours? How do we make that kind of really cool, outlandish idea really like chewable and executable? And how do we test it and whatever? And that's how we complement each other.
My next question.
Yeah.
How's what you described different from the COO?
COO is the greatest execution of a brand. COO. So our COO, Johnny Zila, who I'll definitely introduce you to. He probably one of the best operators, if not the best operator I've ever worked with. He while he is involved in the strategy and involved in the creation, what he cares about is how are we going to execute this every guest, every time, thousands of times over without a miss, and all the development, all the attraction of people and how to get people on board and how to get them excited and whatever. Johnny leads. I'm the strategist that takes the great ideas, puts the plan together, and helps develop those processes. The COO, Chief Operating Officer, is the great executioner, not in the bad way.
Not executionist.
Not exactly. But he is the czar of execution in the restaurants and leads all of that. And then our innovator is the czar of dream.
And I'm pushing a lot of EOS right now because I'm really trying to commit to like, what if I have to teach anything? What am I going to teach, and how can I start teaching people how to execute all the things? So in EOS language, Joe is definitely the entrepreneur, the dreamer, the guy that says this is what is possible, and then he looks to both you and John or Johnny. Does he go by Johnny or Johnny?
Johnny.
You and Johnny are both rocket fuel. You're the people that take the dream and make it possible.
That's right.
But it sounds like there's a division because it sounds like Johnny's more the people systems, the people. How do we make this possible? The maintaining the standards and focusing on the people systems. But you're focusing more on the bigger picture operational systems of how do we do is that safe or like more like strategy?
Strategy.
Okay.
Yeah. So where are we going to grow? What pace are we going to grow? Restaurant footprint.
Where are we going to grow? What pace are we going to grow? Okay. So sorry, did I cut you short?
No.
Let me make some notes on this because I'm gonna make you dissect this. I am.
Yeah.
So where are we going to go? Where?
So where in terms of geography?
How fast?
What's the so the pace is important. Is it 5 restaurants a year? Is it 10 restaurants a year? Is it 12 restaurants a year? And then obviously I oversee all the other strategies, the departments of how we're going to help support making great culture, whether it be benefits, whether it be training systems, and where we're going to invest in it. And where Johnny complements that is that Johnny is the one that's going to help manufacture those. He's in charge of training reports into him. So Johnny and I will collaborate a lot on what the vision can be. We'll take some of Joe's ideas, and I'll say, okay, here's how it's going to fit in our strategic plan, and Johnny will kind of tell me what's really going to work and what's not, and we challenge each other on that. And so I am, I'll take a great idea. Where does it fit within the organization? Where do we want to invest in it? How do we get there? And then work with Johnny into refining that idea, and then making it put it in an executable fashion.
Got it. So you kind of figure, okay, this all makes sense. I do really want to thank you for breaking that down too. That was very helpful.
Yeah.
Let's before we wrap up, let's just focus on in terms of where are we going? What markets? I mean, are you able to disclose this information without giving away too much of your secrets?
Yeah, no.
Okay, what markets really excite you right now? Based off of your brand and what you are, who you are, what are you looking for in terms of growth, in terms of where?
Yeah, so I think we've had a lot of success in these sort of mid-major cities. We started in Columbus, like I said, Columbus, Ohio. But believe it or not, Columbus is a hotbed for concepts. I mean, it's where White Castle was founded, Bravo Brio was founded, Wendy's is founded. Charlie Steaks, Cameron Mitchell's, and the list goes on.
DP Dough, which is the only calzone franchise I'm aware of that exists right now.
It's from Columbus also?
Maybe. I saw one of the locations.
So I mean, but we love these types of cities. They're approachable. But say again?
Momentum cities.
Well said. That's exactly right. And so we've built out Ohio, so we have a strong presence in Columbus. We have a strong presence in Cleveland, a strong presence in Cincinnati, Dayton area. Yeah. Pittsburgh, we have 6 or 7 locations. Handful in Indianapolis, a whole bunch in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Detroit Metro, and then Ann Arbor, Michigan. Also Grand Rapids, Michigan. And we have started a spider down to as far south as Alabama this year. Wow. And I think from the way we look at geography to now, it's about fill in. We don't want to outkick our coverage, so to speak, and want to stay within sort of our infrastructure as we start to plot the course across the country. So we have some infill where we're focused now. But if you look at between Columbus, Ohio, and as far south as Alabama, we have some real infill in the Mid-Atlantic, and that's where we're going to be focusing.
Using the centrific circle approach. This idea of concentric circles. What did I say the first time?
Concentrical. Yeah. Thank God we're not in a spelling bee. We're okay, though.
Concentric circles, which is this idea of starting small in the middle and then just going slightly out.
Yes, and I think it's exactly where we started. And to be candid, like everyone else, we probably got a little stretched. And so right now we're coming back into those circles, as you describe, to do the infill.
So why is that a good approach?
You want to couple reasons. I think one, generic for all restaurants. I think that to build a brand, you have to start to get recognized as a brand. So the more density you can build, the faster you can build density, the more momentum you can build.
More brand identity.
Exactly. So versus putting one here and then one 4 hours away, you may not get a lot of crossover. Right. So we're trying to infill these markets to kind of build more brand identity. Two, one of the unique things about Condado, which we haven't spoken about, is we have a make fresh kitchen we call a commissary, where everything's centralized. So we are in complete control of our quality, and why we can, put our name on everything that we do. 80+% of what we do is produced in one place. We do our own logistics today and deliver. So we have a 26,000 square foot facility that produces all of our product fresh, and we deliver to our restaurants every other day. And so we in our logistics program, could also stay, as long as we're within 11 hours drive, which all the locations that I mentioned, that helps us keep consistency. Now, as we expand, we may add another commissary, or we may use other broadliners, because we've done a ton of work on shelf life and still keeping it fresh, no preservatives, etc. So that's also part of our discipline, is that we have a very unique system where we're producing these things centrally, all fresh, no preservatives, etc. Doing our own logistics, so filling it in the way we do, it just makes a lot of sense for our business.
Got it. Thank you again for the detail. And we got to talk about how fast. So like that's a huge one. I think this is where people get in trouble. They think like the answer to success is growth.
Sure.
But then they grow too fast.
Sure.
So how do you find that? You got to grow fast, but you can't grow. How do you find that sweet spot?
It's a lot of it is riding momentum. So we over the last couple of years we've grown 9, 10, 12 restaurants per year. I mean I think we opened up 33 restaurants since 20. All company owned, which is hard to do. I mean, when you're all company owned, not franchised, it's you don't find too many all company owned restaurants unless you're like a Chipotle or a Starbucks or what have you. That's really stamping out restaurants faster than that, especially in a full service environment.
So what determines your growth?
So for us, we had this great brand, or have this great brand, and tacos really emerging. And we think there's the nuance of saying, listen, while 10 to 12 new restaurants a year is aggressive, we think we have the resources and the programs and the process to execute at a high level, and we have, knock on wood. And I
what do you
think
mean by programs?
Programs meaning like how do we open them? How systematic? How have we refined our processes to make these things replicatable and automatic without losing the feel of what we do?
So programs, systems. What was the other thing you said?
It's program systems. I think that's all I said.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So it's all about how do we replicate this. So when you walk into any Condado, while the walls may be different, while the site may look a little bit different, because we're unique in every place, we really try to localize it up, that you can absolutely rock solid deliver on the food quality, the service, the friendliness, etc. So we train a certain way, we open a certain way through process, through systems. We have created a step-by-step process into which we open, to which we train, which we hire, which we develop, in order to maintain consistency and also make it as easy as possible to bring new servers or new cooks in and learn our systems.
So you said Joe's goal is to create opportunity. What does that opportunity look like within the four walls of Condados?
Not to be cliche, it's what you want it to be. That's what it is. If it could be an opportunity just to be a cook while you're going to school, or a server while you're going to school, and you have flexible hours, and you want to take advantage of the flexibility of the restaurant industry. But we also want to create opportunity where if you want to build a career, or you want to better yourself, the way Joe and the way I've always lived my career is that we know that you may not spend the rest of your life in the restaurant industry, but we know it's the type of industry that if you spend X amount of time with us, you're going to learn a skill. You're going to learn something about management. You're going to learn something about how to be a great employee, a great team member. You're going to learn something a little bit more about tequila. Yeah. You're going to learn a little bit something more about food. You're going to take away a life skill.
Yeah.
And that's what's most important. Now, if you want to take that life skill and make it a career, well, we could build that career here at Condado.
And this is precisely why I am convinced that the restaurant industry has the ability to change the world. Because if we raise the standards on the restaurant industry, we have all these people who are coming in, their first job in the world, in their life, is the restaurant industry. Right. We're raising the standards on everybody else.
That's right.
People aren't going to want to leave the restaurant industry.
That's right.
And then we're still the most human, one of the most human, I think we're losing that in a lot of different industries where things are becoming so streamlined and automated. Like at the end of the day, you still need human connection to do what you do.
Listen, like I said, I'm 54 years old and I'm old school. I think hospitality should never lose the human connection. I love the ability to use technology to our advantage to make things more seamless, to make it more convenient in today's fast-paced society. But nothing's going to take the place of someone actually nothing's going to take the place of the human connection, the sincere thank you, the sincere welcome, and I hope we never lose that in our industry. And I think what I love about Condado is the marriage between we're as fast casual, if not faster, but we still drive an experience to where we're making a difference in someone's day.
I love that. This has been a lot of fun, Chris. We're going to wrap up with a few questions. And the first question I have for you is, what is one thing about your business, a value, a process, system that is uncommon that makes you in Condado truly unstoppable?
Come as you are. I'll break it down to as simple as no uniforms. I think no uniforms in our concept symbolizes that we want you to be the best version of yourself. So that translates to your team members and your guests. And when I look at the diversity that we have within Condado, and I'm not trying to be cliche, I think it's the coolest thing. Listen, look at me. I'm in a blazer and slacks. Everyone else I work with is in a t-shirt, jeans, whatever.
That's who you are.
But that's who I am. That's who they are. And you know what? I'm accepted equally. I was the corporate guy. Blah blah blah. Doesn't matter here.
Yeah.
And I think that is the thing that really translates and appeals to folks, and it gets me most excited.
What it communicates to me is come as you are because we accept you for who you are.
Exactly. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Well said.
Yeah, I love that. The mission statement is to change the world by inspiring, empowering, and transforming the industry. How have you personally transformed? If we're going to transform the industry by transforming one restaurant owner at a time, give me an example of how you have transformed. How are you better today than who you were in 1993 or 1995 when you're getting
I'll answer it this way. I like to think that I'm better every year. Because of the experiences. I don't think I've had a year that's been exactly the same as the year prior, whether it be business challenges, business cycles. COVID taught us about how to be nimble and keep an open mind. In terms of how I personally transform the industry, I don't know. I'm a pretty humble guy.
how have you personally transformed?
Oh, how have I personally transformed?
How have you personally transformed? Who are you today versus the man you were?
Gotcha. I think hospitality has taught me how to be humble. I think the more I spend in this business, the more I am humbled by people, and to keep an open mind. I'm a hard charger. Yeah. I'm a type A. There's nothing I don't think I can do, but this industry has also helped me sort of take a breath to continue to listen and be better at listening. Yeah. And I'm still working on that today. I'm not the best at it, but I just love the diversity of this industry, and it humbles me. And I think where it's transformed me is to really create an open mind and some sensitivity to all different things.
Yeah, Christine Miles. I did an amazing workshop with Christine Miles. She's an expert on the power of listening. So maybe we'll reference that one to you too. But she also works with organizations to help organizations listen better. So I don't know.
I like it.
But I'd love if anybody's out there trying to become a better listener. But I'm curious. One more follow-up question on that is, what is humility to you? How do you define humility?
Humility is you've never arrived.
Yeah.
You're not at your destination. I don't know if I'll ever be. I hope the journey never stops.
You mean the infinity game? Or the infinite game?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, it really is. And I like to think I'm humble enough to know that I'm going to continue to make mistakes, and I'm going to continue to learn, and that I'm not above anything or anyone. And I just try to keep an open mind that way.
This is the last question. Get ready for it.
All right.
If you got the news, you'll be leaving this world tomorrow. All the memories of you, your work, and your restaurants will be lost with your departure, with the exception of 3 pieces of wisdom that you could leave behind for the good of humanity and your legacy. What would those 3 pieces of wisdom be?
Listen, man. As base as it gets, I'll tell you right now, integrity, period.
1.
Communication.
2. The
ability to communicate is so vitally important. 3. Being present.
3.
Being present.
Right. I love this, man. You've been a lot of fun, Chris.
Oh, man.
Thank you so
I really
much.
enjoyed it, Eric.
And you really let me push, and I appreciate that.
Yeah.
That's how we're going to really get the message out to you.
Yeah.
Getting out of the standard, answers of things,
sure.
really getting to the core of what makes this
I enjoyed it.
And the people behind it tick. So I'm really trying to get to the point where I'm no longer deciding who becomes a guest of Restaurant Unstoppable. I want the industry to decide who should be made an example of.
Yeah.
So who was that for you? I mean,
I'll tell you what. Our COO Johnny Ziela is a great example of someone who's come up organically in the industry. Family business, started as a family business for him, and it's gone through the cycles, and then came to Condado, has helped build Condado where it is today. He's just probably one of the best, if not the best operator I've ever worked with.
Yeah, I'm sure you know so many people.
Oh, I do. There's another one. There's another CEO by the name of Paul Macaluso, who was the CEO of Another Broken Egg. And it's kind of a sister company of not kind of, it is another holding of the Beekman Group. But Paul Macaluso is another great industry leader, and he leads a franchisor, so a little bit different perspective on his industry as well.
Yeah, this has been a lot of fun, Chris. Again, thank you so much, and you make what I do possible. I'm just a guy who asks questions, but I literally can't do what I do without people like you being so willing to open up, share your story, get vulnerable. There is no questioning. Oh wait, I almost forgot to have you share your. How do we, if we are inspired by this, right? And I know Condado is growing really fast.
Yeah.
How do we come join your team?
CondadoTacos.com. Come check us out. Reach out to us. We're always looking for great people.
Yep.
Please contact us there, and we'd love to build a career with you.
You got social handles you want to drop on us, or is that not your department?
That is not my department, but I'm sure it's hashtag Condado Tacos,
yeah,
blah, blah, blah.
We'll try to find those Instagram handles and stuff. We'll have all that in the show notes. This is episode 1045. Head over to restaurants.
And by the way, we are on Insta, Snap, TikTok, you name it. You look up Condado Tacos, you will find it. You will knock it out in either. You will find it in any of those platforms.
We'll for sure link to the website as well. And there is no question. That is when I say it. There is no questioning. You are absolutely unstoppable.
Oh, thanks, man.
Thank you. Cheers.
Eric, pleasure.
Yeah. Thank you.